Welcome to part 3 of the Rigify Fundamentals course in Blender 4.0. In this part, we'll finally get to use Rigify. After the last exercise in manual rigging, this one should feel easy and be much faster to complete. But speed is not essential right now. Take your time, learn the fundamentals, and that will make everything you do in the future much easier. In fact, you may want to do each exercise twice or even 3 times until everything makes perfect sense. In this chapter, we'll rig this same guy from the last session, but using Rigify this time. You can use the same file from the resources section on Academy. Come and join Academy and you can watch this same video without ads and distractions. I'm also more likely to reply to questions on Academy, so see you there. If you didn't enable Rigify in chapter 1, go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, type Rigify here, and if this checkbox is disabled, enable it. You can save your preferences here, close the window, and done. Now you can press Shift-A, Armature, and we can use a Metarig. Our character is humanoid and we have a human Metarig here, so most people will just go ahead and choose this rig, but the human Metarig is actually quite complex. There are many things that can go wrong with it, so for this first Rigify session, we'll go with the basic human rig. So I'll move it to the side and also create the complex human Metarig. The big differences between these two are in the hands. The complex human actually has fingers, and it also has a face. And we will use the complex rig in the very next session. But let's start slow and we'll use the simple one for this lesson. I'll press Ctrl Z and undo until this state, enable X-ray, and because the Metarig is a little bit bigger than my character, I can press S to scale it. However, if you expand the N panel, you can just press N and look under Item, you'll see that scale has the value of 0.9. This is not good, this can create problems, so I'll press Ctrl A and apply scale. If you happen to move your character in space, you can also press Alt G and that will move it back in the center of the world. And similar, if you have any rotation to it, you can press Alt R. So you want location of 0, 0, 0, rotation also 0, and scale of 1, 1, 1. And the finer adjustments of this rig have to be done in edit mode. So let's go to edit mode. Enable this X option, which you should know from the previous lesson. And now when I move a bone on the left side, the right side will be adjusted automatically. Also, if I tweak the right side, left side is tweaked. Now let's start adjusting the bones. I'll go to front view, select the whole left leg, including this little bone down here, press G and X, and align the bones with the actual leg of the character. In side view, I'll tweak the knee a little bit. Again, it is extremely important to keep a little bit of an angle in the knee, and definitely don't let it bend backwards. I'll align this with the ankle. You can enable wireframe to see things better. In the toe bone, I'll align with the toes. This bone here is quite important. It creates a certain functionality in the rig, and it needs to be positioned exactly at the heel of the character. And it will allow you to raise the foot of the character from the heel. From the front view, scale it up or down so that it is about as wide as the foot of the character. This connection between the bones, which represents the ankle, needs to be inside the volume of the foot, so something like this. But the leg is starting to look good. Again, bone positions are very important. You should use anatomy images to help you decide where to place the bones. But we are still keeping it light, so just do your best and it should be fine, and you can always make improvements later on. Let's align the arm now. I'll place this end of the bone around here, this at the elbow, and this is the wrist. and the end of the hand. I'll make it a little bit longer because we don't have any fingers in this rig. Then from the top view, move the whole bone a little bit on the y-axis. Make sure that this is aligned with the elbow. The shoulder bone, I'm going to squash a little bit on the y-axis to make it a little bit straighter. This can be achieved, of course, by just moving the head and tail of the bone. And I'll place it like this inside the volume of the shoulder area of the character. This is sometimes called a collarbone, so you may align it with the actual collarbone of the character, but placing it inside the volume actually works better in most cases. These here are special breastbones. You can also delete them, but we'll just use this rig as it is. So I'll place these bones something like this. Next, I want to work on the spine, and the legs get in the way, so I can select them and press H to hide them. Now I'll box select over the start of the spine. It consists of a couple of bones, so I want to select everything and move it in the center of the body of the character. Do not adjust the neck connection yet. We'll come back to it in a second. I may want to move these bones back a little bit. These bones can also be safely deleted if you don't want them. They are supposed to help with the automatic weights when we apply them later. I'll just keep them and align them like this. Okay, now we come to the spine. And here is something that you should always keep in mind when working with Rigify. If I select the neck of the character, I can move it and disconnect it from the spine. If you do this, you will get an error and your rig will not generate. I'll show it to you in a second. So now I'll right click to cancel the movement, and my neck bone and spine bone will still be overlapping and connected. So now, to avoid any errors, I can just box select over this area and align these two bones as if they were connected. I'll keep aligning the neck. This is the head bone, and so the head, or the beginning of the head bone, will become the pivot point around which the head rotates. Right? If I go to pose mode, this bone rotates around this point. So a placement like this is good in my opinion. Let's adjust the neck a little bit. And we are actually done aligning this skeleton. I'll press Alt-H to unhide these bones. And I can go to the Armature tab and press the Generate Rig button. And a rig was generated for us. So now if I select the character and shift select this new rig, not the simple meta rig that we tweaked until now, but the newly generated rig, press Ctrl P and choose with automatic weights, then this can be the end of this lesson. I'll disable X-ray, go to pose mode, and move some of these controls. And the character is controlled by this amazing new armature that Rigify made for me. And we'll come back to the rig, but I want to make you aware of a very important feature of Rigify, which is that you can keep tweaking the rig after generation. You have to go back to your Metarig, edit mode, and you can keep adjusting the positions of these bones. For example, let's say that the shoulder didn't move quite as I like it, so I'll move this a little bit, rescale the shoulder a little bit, move the knee slightly, and the Rigify button now says regenerate. So if I press this, the rig will be reset and these changes that I made will be reflected in the final rig. These changes were very subtle, so let's go back to the Metarig and make something more drastic. Actually, I'll undo, disable X here, and only make this arm longer, and generate. And here is how the rig adapted to these changes. And the cool thing is, everything still works. Of course, because of the difference in rotation points, now things are a little bit weird. but it is amazing how forgiving the regeneration process is. These changes were just for demonstration. I'll undo. Another important point that I want to cover is the most common problem that you can experience with this rig. I'll press / to isolate the Metarig, edit mode. And earlier I told you that you shouldn't disconnect the end of the spine and the neck. But let's say that you didn't pay attention, or maybe you just disconnected them by accident. Here is how you can snap them back together. Switch snapping to vertex. Select the one end that you want to snap to the other. Move it, hold Control, and it will snap to the nearest point. Or if I disconnect again and enable the snapping, then I don't need to hold Control. I just need to move the bone until it snaps. And then disable snapping again. Yet another way, select the end of the spine, press Shift S, cursor to select it, and that will place the cursor over here. Select this end and press Shift S, selection to cursor, and that will snap it as well. Personally, I like vertex snapping. Okay, so a quick demonstration. If I disconnect this, go out of local mode and try to regenerate, we'll get this very common error which says bone position is disjoint. So undo, snap your bones, and regenerate, and the rig will generate correctly. Now we've generated the rig, we've parented with automatic weights. If you haven't, select the mesh, shift select the generated rig, Control P, automatic weights. To use the rig, go to pose mode, and by default, both arms and legs will be in IK mode. To rotate the knee, you can use this widget here and double tap R and rotate it. Or in N-panel item, under rig main properties, you can press toggle pole, and that will give you this traditional pole target that we also set up manually in the previous session. If you want to switch arms to FK mode, select one of the arm widgets and slide this IK-FK slider to 1. And now you're in FK mode. I'll switch back to IK. You have this main torso control, which will move the whole torso. A hips control, which controls the butt of the character. Chest control, which rotates the upper body. Shoulder controls, neck, head, and individual spine controls. If I enable X-ray, I even have these tweak controls which I can move and bend the limbs for cartoony effects. The rig has many more options and controls, but this will be enough as an intro. And again, I would like you to take a moment and appreciate what we got in such a short time. This rig was much faster to create, yet it has a lot more features. In fact, you may have no idea how to create most of these features manually. So that is the power of auto rigging. It is fast, it is efficient. So I hope you're starting to enjoy the course, and I think we are ready to rig a complex human character in the next chapter.